Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar today. The topic for today's webinar is Solar for All, the District of Columbia's innovative strategy for low to moderate income solar. This webinar is being presented by the Clean Energy States Alliance, also known as CESA, and we have guest speakers with us today from the DC Department of Energy and Environment. Before I pass it over to them, I'd like to go over a few quick housekeeping notes. You have two options to join the audio portion of today's webinar. Usually I would say pick whichever one works best for you, but for today I'm actually going to recommend that instead of using a telephone, which is one of your options, I would recommend that you use your computer mic and speakers if you have the option to do that. The reason is we will be playing a video during part of this webinar, and the audio for the video is going to play through your computer speakers even if you call in via telephone. So that's the one caveat that comes with this webinar. If during the video you're not hearing the audio properly, do check the volume on your computer speakers or check the settings of your device output. If this presents technical difficulties for you, rest assured that we are recording the webinar and we'll send you a copy of the webinar recording, and the audio should work perfectly on that. You can rewatch it. We'll send that to you this afternoon. But again, if you do have the option to call in using computer mic and speakers, that would be my recommendation for today. Another couple notes for you. If you'd like to minimize the webinar console so that you can view the presentation full screen, you can click on the little orange arrow that you see circled here. And a final note from me, please do feel free to submit your questions and your comments using the question box on the webinar console and hitting send. We will have a Q&A following our presentation today, and we'd like to get to as many audience questions as we can. So with that out of the way, I'd like to pass it over now to our host for today's webinar, Nicole Hernandez Hammer. Nicole is a project director here at the Clean Energy States Alliance, and she's going to give you some quick background, and then she'll be introducing our speakers, and we'll get the webinar started. So over to you, Nicole.
Thank you, Sam. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are happy to have three great panelists with us today. So in order to allow enough time for our video presentation and Q&A with our panelists, I'll share some quick introductions and then we'll jump right in. First, I'd like to introduce our organization, the Clean Energy States Alliance, CESA. We are a national nonprofit coalition of public agencies and organizations working together to advance clean energy. CESA members are mostly state agencies. You can see a list of our members on your screen now. This webinar is part of our Department of Energy States Energy Strategies grant. Starting in 2017, this grant provides CESA and its state partners support to create more access to solar in low and moderate income communities across Washington, D.C. and 5 states, Minnesota, Rhode Island, New Mexico, Oregon, and Connecticut. To learn more about this and other CESA projects, please visit our website. Let's get to our presentation. Today's webinar will feature a film presentation on the District of Columbia's Solar for All program. This is an initiative with a goal to provide 100,000 low to moderate income families with the benefits of locally generated clean energy. After the short documentary film screening, our guest panelists from the DC Department of Energy and Environment, DOEE, will answer questions from the audience. Please be reminded that you can type in your questions for our panelists starting now. We'll do our best to get to as many questions as possible. To introduce the film, we have with us the director of DOEE, Tommy Wells. Appointed January 2015 by Mayor Muriel Bowser, he is chiefly responsible for protecting the environment and conserving the natural resources of the District of Columbia. With a career in public service that spans 32 years, Tommy crafted the Anacostia River Cleanup and Protection Act of 2019 that has generated over $19 million in funding to protect and restore the Anacostia River. Director Wells served as a member of Advisory Neighborhood Commission, ANC 6B, from 1995 to 2000, chair of ANC 6B from 1997 to 1998, and was elected 2 terms as DC Council member of Ward 6 from 2006 to 2015. Thank you for joining us today, Director.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone that's joining us. Thank you to CESA that you're doing a great job in helping us share best practices, as this is a moving target and things are changing rapidly, so we have to learn from each other. And a couple of things I want to say at the outset. One is that District of Columbia functions like a city-state. So our city councils, our state legislature, our mayors, our governor, and that is it's important when you get into how do we fund the things that we fund. The other is that we're a city where and we're part of PJM, the energy delivery grid, that our energy company can distribute energy only, cannot generate it. So our buildings and our residents, they buy energy from aggregator or standard offer service, which is like an aggregator. But the thing is that they have to contract, buy the power at best prices. And many of you are familiar with that, but it's part of what we have in the city. So the solar energy group or association, the solar developers got together, and they were able to convince our city council, say that there needs to be a certain amount of solar power generated from within the District of Columbia by such and such date. And the way to get there is to that when people buy their power, when buildings aggregate and buy their power, that a certain portion of their power must be generated from the district. And if they can't find it anywhere and can't buy it, then they have to pay alternative compliance payments to DOEE, my agency. And then we are obligated with those funds to redeploy those funds to try to deploy solar. So as many of you are familiar with the solar renewable energy credit system, we have that, and that is what the solar developers use to deploy more solar, leveraging the credits, and that's what they sell. And then there's a certain floor of how much the alternative compliance payment is. I won't go too deep into it, but the plan was that we have to achieve a goal of 10% of DC's energy has to come from solar by 2032. And that may have been pushed by 2042 now, but I think it's 2032. And so that kind of drives all this of the solar renewable energy credits, the alternative compliance payments, all that together. But the point being is that then those funds come to DOEE and we're to redeploy them. So when the legislation was being formulated, as you know, different goals get attached. And right towards the end, someone said, okay, for all this money we're putting into solar generated from the district, 100% of its benefits for the energy created has to serve up to 100,000 households in the District of Columbia by 2032. So the problem is that, like much legislation, this was complicated. Like, I don't know if we can generate 10% of our energy from within the District of Columbia. And I know that in terms of households, we're a city of 700,000 people, and there's only about 250,000 ratepayers in the district. So when they say that the benefits of solar have to go to 100,000 households, they pegged it at 80% of average median income and below. So we don't have that many households that get a bill at 80% of median income and below, because as you know, there's affordable housing where their rent has to be, 1/3 of their income, and there's public housing. So when the council said, we think there's 100,000 households at 80% AMI or below, they weren't thinking, how would we distribute energy? They assumed, well, the other thing I want you to know is they said, you have to use the funds to cut their energy burden in half for all these households. So we had to figure out what's the average energy burden. We had to figure out, okay, how do we serve this many households? It seemed really onerous in trying to get our head around how are we going to do this. So the amount of money that we raise each year through the alternative compliance payments is very subject to what are the SRECs selling at. Do they buy SRECs? Do they pay the compliance payments? It's not very regular. But the first year that we got going, we had $13 million to deploy for this purpose, for Solar for All. And I thought a lot about with my team, I don't really know how we're going to achieve the goal of 100,000 households when the 100,000 households at 80% AMI and below, they don't receive power bills. So I thought about it, and what we did is that we put it out to bid. We said to the solar developers, to the community, whoever wanted to bid on it, this is what you have to achieve. You have to show us how you're going to serve this level of household and how you're going to deploy solar. And we ended up with 9 successful bidders. And what I was hoping for is what we got, that they looked at many different ways to provide the value from the solar through CREFs, through solar directly on people's homes. They all came up with creative ways how to provide the equivalent of half of a year's power bill to residents, and then they went about to do it. And so I also realized, as you can imagine, this is so kind of, I don't know what we're going to end up with. I don't know if it's going to look like we just blew $13 million. And it's certainly because the way that you're going to have subscribers, or we're going to have others benefit in different ways by, say, creating a resiliency hub within a building that utilizes the solar on top. We put a value to that. When someone just looked at it and said, well, how much did you pay per kilowatt to generate from solar? It will look like a lot. And also, I knew that some of these projects would fail, or I thought they would, and they'd run into barriers. I mean, all of you are dealing with historic preservation, zoning. People don't like to see so many solar panels in an urban area. It's tough right now. So I decided that to kind of protect the program and the public interest, we would contract or bring in, put out for bid, to get a filmmaker to come in and do a documentary. Do a documentary with all of our successful grantees and show what they did, show what was hard, what worked, what didn't work, and tell the story, so that when, in retrospect, when the legislators, auditors, and others say, so what did you do with that $13 million? I didn't have to just tell them how many kilowatts we generated, or even how many people we think we served, because they'll go back and say, they don't have a power bill. How did you serve them? It could become a difficult way to try to explain it on paper or explain it through my staff. So a documentary would tell the story. And this actually turned out better than I thought. When we first did, I thought some of this is new. So let's try to do this in a way that other states and cities can look at what worked, what didn't work, which looks good for them. And I have to say, my team, along with Pendragon Productions, did just an incredible job. And it tells the story. You know, you can bet the city council member that we put in the video or in the film, in the documentary, they're pretty excited to see themselves in that and to be able to tell the story. This program is protected now. It has political cachet because we were able to tell the story, and it will survive audits. Now, that's not the only way we audit it, of course. We audit, you know, did they deploy all the hardware that we paid for? Did everybody spend the money right? Did my team spend the money right? We did all that, but it's about accountability, and no one really can complain about the film didn't even cost that much. You can find out at the end, I think it's like 150,000, that in comparison to what we got in terms of validation of our experimenting. And it's always nervous to experiment with public dollars, but doing a documentary turned out to be the right thing. So here you go.
Thank you for joining us today, and I'm delighted to be joined by Director Tommy Wells and Councilmember Mary Chae from Ward 3, who also chairs the Council's Committee on Transportation in the Environment. Today, we're taking a very important step forward in making our city safer, stronger, and greener. We can't wait another day, we all know, to mitigate the effects of climate change. And that's
Solar for All is part of helping DC reach its goal to reduce the amount of energy that comes from fossil fuels.
The primary feature of this legislation was this idea about equity, equal access to all folks in the district, no matter what their income is. We want to use that money to make solar available to 100,000 people in the District of Columbia.
That's never really been done before, anywhere. In DC, we're acutely aware of the fact that we're becoming an unaffordable city, but we have a history of a city that has been an inclusive city.
for so long, as we were talking about solar, only people of certain means would even consider it.
So as we developed our policy landscape and began to create more programs, we wanted to be able to kind of bridge that gap between the early adopters and the average citizens that were interested in solar perhaps, but may not have been able to afford it.
The program really is centered around the goal of providing the benefits of solar energy to 100,000 low-income district households in roughly an amount that would reduce their utility costs by at least half.
So we had to look at, how do we do this?
We didn't see a lot of low to moderate income families think that solar was an option for them. But thanks to Solar for All, we're able to go into under-resourced communities and help them go solar.
My name is Lena Prince and Chaco, and I've been living in this home for 18 years. Over the years, it's been very expensive to heat and cool. It would average around $450 a month, which is a lot on my salary. So I wasn't able to do a lot of things because you're heating and cooling. That's about the bulk of it.
What we find in Washington, when we walk up to people and say, hey, we would like to put free solar power on top of your roof and give you some money, they don't believe us. They're like, no, you don't. There's some catch here.
Over the course of the year, you're making energy, using energy, making credits, using credits, and it nets out to be some percentage of your total electricity usage. We were actually able to use a grant program through the city, through the city's Solar for All, which enables us for income qualified homeowners to be able to cover the entire cost of the system.
I think the communities that we work in are oftentimes betrayed. They really feel, I think, vulnerable.
They've been promised things like these before. You're already starting with that mistrust and people are skeptical.
And so sitting down and building trust with our homeowners and with our clients is really important.
Under our model, we focus on education first and foremost. So when somebody signs up for the co-op and says they're interested in Solar for All, the first thing we do is we give them a call and we walk them through the process.
From the minute that they sit down and start filling out the initial application to make sure that they're qualified, to the install date, to the point where we turn the system on. We, can answer any questions, talk through any concerns, not only have the information presented to them, but also be a part of the process.
Someone told me that there was a program where you could get help as a senior citizen so that you can age in place. You don't have to leave your home. They looked at my budget and looked at how much money I'm paying, and then they told me that they would send the people from Grid to see me.
There's another Workday install this week, so that's still on track for Thursday. The Solar for All program is not only a clean energy bill, but it's also a jobs bill.
One piece is to train people, our own residents, in how to do solar.
SolarWorks DC is a training program for the individuals in the communities that we're serving already, and making sure that everyone has an opportunity to enter into the solar industry.
So SolarWorks DC is divided into 3 cohorts each year that last 12 weeks.
The 12-week course, its basic premise is to get the skills you need to be an entry-level solar installer.
And then we have a summer cohort through the Summer Youth Employment Program that lasts 6 weeks.
At the time, I really didn't know anything about solar, so when I went into the program, I was only there to get a dirt bike. Like, that was my only focus. And then when I did my first install, it made me think differently. Yeah, so we just gotta finish this side. Let's do it. And I realized how easy and the impact I was making. I was like, I can do this for a career. At the end of the 6 weeks, they really liked the way I worked, and they offered me a solar core term, and that's 13 weeks where you get paid to learn.
We want everyone to build sort of a pathway into this industry, and so you take that first step into installation, and then we offer resources to continue that education.
They really taught me from start to finish to how the installs work and the permitting process and everything. Now I'm the workforce training supervisor for Grid Alternatives, and my role is to teach our job trainees how to install solar.
Dominic, he's amazing. He's very, very detail-oriented and very kind. And he really makes sure you understand everything. And he's also from DC, so it's cool. So it's like, oh, you're just like me, and you're showing me how to really grow and be better and something. Man, he's passing the torch down to me, and I think that's really cool.
SolarWorks, it has every challenge that any job training program would have, on top of the challenges of deploying solar. So where do I begin? The housing stock here in the district is older.
Now you have to do repairs because the house is getting older and older. And so I didn't really have money to do everything.
A lot of the homes need electrical upgrades, they need roof repairs, or some of them even need whole re-roofs.
And so if we can't help them repair their homes, they're ultimately not going to stay in that home. And so making sure that that's part of and continues to be part of this program is really important.
The grid people came, and they have these young people that come with them to help do the installation. And they were a lot of fun. And then they encouraged me to go on the roof, and I was petrified. I've never been, oh my God. When they were encouraging me, come on, we'll help you. You won't fall. And so I climbed up on the roof and had a picture taken on the roof, and I saw the panels myself. And it was really nice. I used to feel ill when the bill comes. It would average around $450. Dropped considerably. When you get a bill that's $100 and something, at first I was afraid. I was thinking, well, maybe they'll call and say they made a mistake. But now, if you look it up, I don't owe any money except the new bill coming up, and you sleep better at nights because you feel free.
We're pursuing our renewable energy goals. We are training people for jobs, good jobs, and at the same time, we're providing equity across the District of Columbia so that everybody, no matter what your income level, will have access to the benefits of solar energy.
Also, with Solar for All, the goal is to create energy in the District of Columbia. So it's not being generated elsewhere and then we take some kind of credit, but where we actually are using the electricity that we generate here in the city.
We are restricted in where we can install solar. The solar has to be installed within the boundaries and borders of the district. With this aggressive goal, we needed to solve certain barriers in a replicable and scalable way.
So we've asked these innovators, entrepreneurs, developers of solar, come up with different ways of how do you transfer the value of solar power to lower income residents?
So we call this round the innovation and expansion phase, wherein we listed specific barriers that needed to be solved.
We have a lot of people in multifamily buildings that are in affordable housing, and there's only 1 meter for the whole building.
We didn't believe we had an actual 100,000 homes in the district that actually had electricity bills. So the innovation phase allowed us to take an additional look at providing the benefits of solar through amenities, building upgrades, or other qualitative benefits such as direct cash payments.
Any questions?
We're going to see what's the most efficient use of the money to serve the greatest number of folks. And these entrepreneurs, these inventors, are going to show us how to do it. And they're also going to show us what doesn't work.
Affordable housing has unique challenges with respect to renewable energy.
I think we're going to throw everything on the wall here, and then we'll narrow it down to a couple and go deeper.
The first and largest of those is what we call the split incentive problem. The financing for affordable housing is incredibly complex. It's typically a stack of 5 to 10 different sources of financing, and several of those sources are often cash flow contingent. When the cash flow of the project increases by lowering costs through energy efficiency or through renewable energy, the owner of the project doesn't necessarily benefit from those lower costs. It's those lenders and that capital stack that benefits. That means that they're going to invest a lot of energy, no pun intended, to create renewable energy and not enjoy much of the benefit. So it really comes down to, is it worth it? Is it worth all of the effort to do this?
If the expense and the payback are not doing enough to make the private market move, you can incentivize it.
For the DC Solar for All grant, we've created a unique mechanism that meets affordable owners where they're motivated.
The developers are very fee-driven, and what we learned was that there's a way that you could take some of that savings and kind of bring it forward.
And by giving them a cash payment at closing, they really perked up and were willing to listen to the pitch and ultimately close on the transactions. Why that was important is because it was a significant cash infusion at closing on day one that compensated them for their effort, for putting together the transaction, and for their investment over the next few years.
In affordable housing, it's actually a little bit tricky to pass through those benefits of clean energy.
Utility allowances are part of that complexity, and in certain building types, if you were to reduce the electric bill of a person living in an apartment complex, that would require you to increase rents.
Because they're going to pay a certain percentage of their total income on their housing expenses. So that was one of the big challenges. We created a whole set of community benefits in the form of enhanced daycare services. In some of the properties that we're working with, they're simply cutting a rebate check. Folks are looking at financial literacy trainings. Some folks really wanted improved security as an amenity. They felt unsafe in their communities, so the money from the energy savings flowed back into a higher quality, safer, and more livable residential environment.
In total, we're providing Solar for All specific benefits to 24 properties. So it's $3.25 million in Solar for All benefits over 15 years.
Climate change is happening. And so we have an obligation as a government to protect the people of Washington and the assets of our city.
Frequently, the climate changes we're having, the extreme weather, has a worse effect on people in low-income communities.
My name is Samuel Buggs. I'm 62 years old. I have respiratory problems, so I have COPD. I remember approximately 2 years ago, the power grid went out.
We are aware that for our residents,
The shutdown of a grid creates enormous stress.
There was no air, there was no lights. Our stoves and everything else was ran on electricity. And I couldn't take it because I had problems breathing.
In the midst of doing this design work, a new concept came on the table called shelter-in-place resilience.
So we're working on a project now with Jubilee Housing that will have solar panels on the roof and a battery storage system in the basement to create a resiliency center. It's even being funded partly by Pepco Foundation because they see the importance of it.
This is the first of its kind, as we know, specific to the District of Columbia as it relates to residential facilities.
So if there is a power outage event, which we know, unfortunately, there will be, they can access the television, updates on information, and a host of other resources that power delivery provides.
We have a small kitchenette so people can cook food. Medicines that need to be refrigerated can be refrigerated during a blackout.
Just imagine living in a building that would provide a safe area and space despite what may be going on in the rest of the city with the possible power outage. So I definitely feel fortunate and blessed.
And so connecting the potential for renters to participate in this new clean energy economy, new technology, and really benefit from a solar project is the innovation.
When I first started with this program, when I started with the agency a decade ago, when we drew a map of the district and just had dots of where solar was installed, there were some wards where there may have been one dot, and then other wards where there were clusters of dots. So there were some households and customer classes that were being left behind.
We have something called community solar, meaning you generate solar on top of a roof, and then you share it with folks that don't live under that roof, but you share it with other households.
Community solar was a way in which we thought we would mostly solve the limitation on the access to solar in the district.
On 1101 New York Avenue, we're going to put the solar on here and here and here. One of the slogans when you bring in a lot of sources of money is that money's fungible. You can bring it in from one source and use it somewhere else. So in the same way, we sort of rapidly saw that energy was fungible too. The whole idea of community solar, you can put the arrays anywhere and feed the energy into what I'll call an energy savings bank.
The energy that's created from the solar panels go into the grid. That grid takes that energy into the utility. It's just like a highway, and it stops off at various locations. You then charge the bill to your regular utility, and with it there are savings and credits that are created.
And all of that's necessary because the cost of electricity in DC for a family is really high.
In downtown Washington, D.C., where we have most of our arrays, that means producing energy on top of a 10 to 12-story building.
We have the first big vertical array. The south-facing wall of a building can support solar as well. And we're directing the power to 90 low-income residents. The buildings are in northwest and northeast. The families are in southwest and southeast. So somewhere in that ether in between, the electricity gets turned into money. And that's where the magic happens.
Rooftops are a very unique thing in Washington, D.C. Many of them are aging. So sometimes it takes teamwork and some creativity.
Virtually any building, any field, any real estate within the city of Washington, D.C. can be a host site for community solar.
About 3 or 4 years ago, we began to look at solar to see how well that also would benefit not only the church, but the community.
With anything in a new program, even with solar, it takes a lot of education of the masses. We had to show the benefits for the community and for the church.
The art of working in a community doesn't come easy.
And so we sent out flyers and we knocked on doors and said, look, come on in.
We develop a rapport and educate them on what the steps are and how the advantages play into the community.
You guys ready to go?
You all are one of the first projects that we are having the opportunity to construct and to be a part of and to develop. And so,
First, we tell them how many kilowatts will be created and what it will look like. And so, let's say it's 160 some kilowatts. In our model, that means that we can help 47 low, moderate income families. And they get a lease payment. Now, with that lease payment, they would see maybe about $300 and some odd a month for the next 20 years. So they said, is that all we're going to get?
We collaborated with Groundswell and their team to make sure that the roofs were in good shape. And so this program was an opportunity to further our inroads into the community to say, look, we have a program that's going to benefit the residents of this neighborhood.
The new solar program is expected to provide some big savings for families in Southeast DC. The solar panels are expected to cut the utility bills of those affected families by half.
My mother was the recipient of the program. You know, my father passed away. And so, you know, that was really, really hard on her. By being retired now, you know, just only one income in the house, this will greatly help reduce her bills on energy.
In a couple of months, it's $100. I have a record of all my bills every month.
And so now she's going to be a happy recipient of the energy credits that's going to be generated through this program.
For the month of January,
you have to go back to your core, what your core mission is. And our core mission is to help the community.
What solar does is turn back on and provide some advantages that lift up a family and then lift up a community.
It's something we all have. I feel like if anything should be shared, it should be the sun. It's a matter of, if you will, environmental justice.
it's so important for DC to really represent American values when it comes to doing our part to fight against climate change.
And so sometimes you need government money and also direction, perhaps leadership, to move us forward.
You're the only ones doing this, so there's not others to compare to.
We wanted to inject creativity. We wanted innovation in being able to install solar at large scale through single-family homes as well as multifamily buildings, office buildings, just trying to unlock the roofs that we needed to be able to achieve the goals of Solar for All.
So right now, we're really focused on implementation and construction. And in terms of lessons learned, we've seen that rooftops are generally the easiest types of solar systems to build. Canopies and carports and even ground mount systems are not so easy. Larger systems that are on the ground just are not necessarily welcome in many communities, especially in places that have not seen anything like this before. Right now, federal incentives are really good, district incentives are really good. Those things won't last forever. So we have to start planning to scale up very quickly in the next couple years.
By 2032, we know we need to install at least 300 megawatts of solar across the district. So we will be focusing on community solar, maximizing capacity, and we want to have the industry just focus on building capacity across the district. Every single installation counts, every megawatt, every kilowatt that we install will count towards this ultimate goal.
There's still a lot of questions that kind of remain as far as what will work and what won't.
It's a new frontier. Each city in America is having to figure that out.
One of the benefits of this great Solar for All cohort is, in some ways, misery loves company. We all get together and we talk about the issues and the problems. And it's comforting to know that it's not just us, that these are hard projects and we're all going first in this and we're all creating as we go. The environment really does need people to think in innovative ways, to think broadly, to really double down and do everything we can to support the environment. But another equally important challenge is to support our low-income communities.
So what we've experienced in implementing Solar for All is that 2,000 families have taken advantage of it. And what we've seen is they've been able to reduce their utility bills by 50%. What we also know is that we are training our residents for good paying jobs in solar. We talk a lot about how everything that our government and our administration is focused on is creating more pathways to the middle class for DC residents. The Solar for All helps get us there.
Solar for All is just a piece of a greater effort and initiative to be smarter, to be greener, and to try to preserve the planet and preserve the people that need it.
We will now go into the Q&A portion of our webinar. Please continue to type in your questions for our panelists. On our panel today, we have Jennifer Kulp. Jennifer is an energy program specialist at the Department of Energy and Environment and is the Outreach and Education Coordinator for the Affordability and Efficiency Division. Jennifer supports a range of energy efficiency and utility affordability programs, such as the Weatherization Assistance Program, Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, Utility Discount Program, and the Solar for All program. Jennifer worked with Pendragon Productions to produce the DC Solar Stories documentary. Also with us, we have Daniel White. Daniel White is an energy program specialist at the Department of Energy and Environment. He is a program manager for Solar for All and manages various grants related to low to moderate income solar, in addition to the State Energy Strategies Multi-State Grant with CESA. Daniel also coordinates a wide range of activities related to renewable energy and advises district residents, government agencies, building owners, and other organizations on related matters for the Energy Administration. Thank you both for joining us today. Our first question for our panelists is, can you talk a little bit about the relationship that DOEE has with grid alternatives and how it might have changed over the course of the initiative?
Good afternoon. This is Daniel White. I'll take that question. So Grid Alternatives is one of our grantees. So they are a contractor to the DC government, and they are very instrumental in a number of phases. One, they are part of our workforce development. They manage our SolarWorks DC program, where the mayor mentioned in the video about how we're helping to connect residents with jobs in the green economy and specifically the solar industry. And the second portion of that is that they were one of our original innovation and expansion grantees to look at how to make innovative ways to invest in solar for low and moderate income single family residential direct installs on rooftops. And then thirdly, they are also working with us on developing our largest low to moderate income community solar project in the district. That will be 2.5 megawatts. So, you know, that's kind of how they're connected. So they're a big player in the market in DC.
Thanks, Daniel. The next question is, what was the average energy burden to start?
So I don't have those specific numbers to get into that, but I can definitely get back with my team and you know, get that to you all to share with them. But I do know that we were looking at connecting our low income home energy assistance program recipients with Solar for All with the intent to be able to help those residents and households that have the highest energy burden be able to benefit from the Solar for All program.
And
yeah, this is Tommy. Let me add to that. I think one of the most interesting challenges is to we have about 20,000 households that receive LIHEAP, and we have been working on how can we use these benefits to the LIHEAP recipients, because generally our jurisdiction, like many, the LIHEAP money we get from the federal government is generally not enough for the need, and we're trying to figure out how can we supplement the LIHEAP with the Solar for All benefits. And so that's been interesting. But also the other part that's been good is we know where 20,000 households are that are below a certain income that could use help. So it has been helpful to put the program together.
Jennifer, did you want to add anything to that?
Sure, I was just going, and this is kind of general energy burden information, but in the U.S., the average energy burden for a general household, it can range anywhere from 2% to 5% of their overall income, while a lot of our low-income residents, the burden that they pay for their energy bills sometimes can reach up to 15% and beyond, which, that can impact, as mentioned during the documentary, healthcare payments, childcare payments, medicine, groceries,
Great, thank you. One of our audience members writes, wonderful program. Wonder how many installs to date and average net savings per home. Also, is energy efficiency included?
Great questions. We do not offer energy efficiency under the Solar for All program. However, we do have a weatherization program that's connected to our low-income home energy assistance program, where residents do receive energy efficiency measures as they are qualified to participate with the home energy assistance program. And remind me of the other two questions.
Also, so the whole question is wonderful program. I wonder how many installs to date and average net savings per home. Also, is energy efficiency included?
Okay. Yeah, and for the installs, we actually have two parts of the program that are under Solar for All. We have the community solar portion of the program, where we have subscribers that receive the benefit of solar installations that are installed across the district through the program to help them reduce their bill to receive 50% benefit. And then the second part of that is direct installs that we actually do for eligible households, where we install approximately 3.5 kW per household that helps them to reduce their energy cost. And to date, we have about 84 installations through Solar for All, the installation program, and then we're looking to do an additional 100 installs for this year, meaning year 2020. And then for the number of community solar subscribers that we have, we've currently subscribed over 1,300 households that will be receiving the benefit of Solar for All to help reduce their electricity bill by 50%. And there are continuous demand that we're looking at, probably about 3,000 additional folks that have applied to participate with the program.
Thank you. A couple of our audience members asked about how the funding for this program came together.
Absolutely. Great. Okay, go ahead, Director Wells. You can take that.
I'm just going to jump in on that. It's the what we call the alternative compliance payments, something I went over earlier. But where it comes from is that that anyone that gets power has to have a certain amount of that power come from solar generated power from within the District of Columbia. And most of our power is bought through aggregation. And so through large contracts, those contractors have to either buy solar renewable energy credits from people that have installed solar, or they have to pay an alternative compliance payment. And generally, there's a balance in that market. So we get the alternative compliance payments, which are higher or lower. It's hard to plan because the SRECs market, as you might imagine, people aggregate them and try to, of course, get their best return. So it's been hard to predict. In fact, we've even hired someone just to help us model how much we're going to get each year so we can budget ahead. But it's the alternative compliance payments generate anywhere from 6 million to 40 million is the way we project it each year. And I know that's an incredible fluctuation, but we're using a sustainable energy utility as kind of our ASO, which is Administrative Services Organization. They can contract a lot faster than us. They do it according to our specs. But again, how it's funded is through the alternative compliance payment when people buy their power or aggregators buy power. And that's how we pay for it. You know, I will say the solar developers have been very successful with our legislature to get bills like this passed. It's impressive. It didn't necessarily come from just climate activists or from equity activists. It really came from the solar development community.
Great, thank you. One of our audience members writes, Tommy talked about knowing some things wouldn't work. Can you talk more about what has not been effective? What lessons have been learned?
Is there anyone from my team that would like to talk about Sun, DC Sun? That was a difficult one.
Yeah, I can touch on that. This is Daniel, Director Wells. So DC Sun is one of our installers that's in the district. They are also an educational arm for residential installs. So as a participant with the Solar for All grant, their focus was looking at how to do a bulk purchase model, being able to bring together households and be able to help educate them on the process to go solar and also reduce the cost of going solar. Through Solar for All, of course, there was funding that was provided, so there was no cost to the residents. So the challenge that DC Sun had was being able to move enough people through the process to be able to scale that model. So there were maybe 10 households that would participate per bulk purchase grouping, but being able to go through the contracting process and being able to educate everyone with the different learning curves and different decision-making points of the individual households, you know, kind of slowed the process down for them to be able to deploy large numbers of installs across households in the district. So that was the primary, you know, challenge with that model. But in the general market, the model tends to work a lot better, just because, you know, people are looking forward to having that reduction in their costs when they don't have the Solar for All no cost subsidy to be able to offset that cost. Did you want to add anything to that? Anyone on the team?
No, the thing was that we really wrestled, you know, with some of these the recipients, we wrestled with them a little bit on could they deliver in the time that they had promised. And Solar for All had trouble getting households to come on board with them, and we had to try to provide some flexibility. But the idea of kind of a cooperative model where folks come together and all share the power, that didn't work that well. The other thing that happened, I don't know if you're from a jurisdiction that has solar renewable energy credits, but the wild fluctuation of the value of the renewable energy credits, where they will bid on a project and figure that they'll get, you know, as they put their equity stack together or their financing, whether it be the income tax credits, the federal income tax credits, depreciation on the solar panels, but then you add in how much money they can make off the SRECs. Our SREC market took a dip, and our, you know, the grantees came to us and said, I don't think we can do the project. And we had to really work with them on whether it was going to be scaled back or not. Now, I will say that we've been doing close to 100 rooftops a year through an earlier program that now we're putting under Solar for All of low-income homes where they own their home. And what we had to do was we realized you can't put, as everybody knows, you can't put solar on a roof that needs to be replaced in 2 years, and or it has rot in it. So we reprogrammed to what's permissible, even helped with the legislation, to now we match roof repair dollars with the solar dollars. Solar dollars can be used to repair a roof. Means that the solar costs more, but as you saw in the video, that it was a way that people could stay in their houses with a roof repair and lower bills. So those were some of the lessons learned. Is you got to have a roof that can, you know, that will hold the panels for at least 15 years, sometimes longer, for the financing to work.
And the director touched a bit on SRECs, and just wanted to briefly expand on that. I know we got a few questions during the documentary. So an SREC is a solar renewable energy certificate, and just some quick information on it. So one SREC is equivalent to 1 megawatt hour of solar electricity. And as the director mentioned, you know, there's the market goes up and down with SRECs, and SRECs aren't necessarily determined by one entity. It's subject to supply and demand constraints. So and Daniel can kind of might be able to expand on pricing, but right now, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I think the pricing is around $400 right now per SREC. And as the director mentioned, we have a staff member who keeps an eye on that, since it's subject to change, you know, throughout the seasons and throughout the fiscal year.
Absolutely, Jennifer. That's correct. And I know that there's a lot of, recently we had some legislation that helped to increase our RPS, which has had a favorable impact on the market. And that's why, based on what you just heard from Jennifer, that average of about $400. Basically, yesterday, the market price was about $430 per SREC. So the new legislation is also, like I said, made a favorable impact on the SREC prices in the district.
So Daniel, explain what the RPS is. What does that stand for?
Oh, yes, that's the renewable portfolio standard. So as the video kind of alluded to, being able to increase the amount of solar that's deployed in the district is a goal that the city has, and then part of the mayor's vision to get to carbon neutral by 2050. So when we increase that renewable portfolio standard, requiring more local solar to be deployed, that increased the amount of demand that there was for solar in the district. So as a result, the price of the solar renewable energy certificates went up in a response to that.
So we have time for one more question. Folks want to know what the impact of COVID has been on Solar for All.
That's a great question.
Yeah, I was going to say I could start with that, Director, and then let you kind of jump in. That is absolutely a great question. We have been able to work with the council to be able to allow, and they have allowed the solar as an essential service in the district, so that we're able to continue construction. However, there have been some modifications to how construction teams are actually working on site as to be able to follow the restrictions that are there for social distancing and making sure that we're being responsive to public health and safety. So it has had a bit of a slowdown effect just because you don't have as much manpower on site to be able to do the construction end of it. But as far as the permitting piece permitting piece, paperwork and processing can still be reviewed and approved as required. But then from an inspection standpoint, there have been some modifications as well, looking at ways to be able to do site inspections and also still maintain the COVID-19 compliance requirement and being socially distanced and also maintaining that public health and safety. Director, did you have anything to add on that?
No, I think that's good. That's good. It's the restrictions that you would imagine of social distancing. You know, we're not going to do a lot of individual homes because we have to go in there and change out their power box or something like that. But yeah, it's a challenge. But it's generally more likely that the commutable, the CREFs, the solar CREFs, are going to be more successful. We have one. It was not in the documentary, but we're putting in about 2.5 megawatts on a brownfield in the District of Columbia on ground mount. And my understanding is they don't have a problem with moving forward with that.
Great, thank you. Unfortunately, we've run out of time for Q&A. We have a lot of questions, but we want to thank the audience for the questions you've sent, and for the speakers for the presentation and for all the great responses. What I wanted to do before we close is just to have a moment to give each of our panelists today a moment to make some final comments. Director, we can start with you.
Well, I think the thing is that all of our cities and many of our states are trying to figure these things out. I will say that the plummeting cost of solar panels, the longer warranties you can get, you know, they can last, as you may know, well over 20 plus years. It's just a moving field, but there's more that can be done than I thought. I was pessimistic that we'd be able to get 10% of our power to come from DC from 2042, and I'm still, initially I said 2032, where a lot of our laws came from. That was initially the 5%, now it's up to 10. I don't know if we can hit 10%, but it does force innovation, and I think that's the main thing is that it forces innovation. We do see under COVID that obviously our main users of power, the commercial buildings, have dropped power usage substantially. We're going to have a new world of teleworking, which will take less power. It's just a lot of different moving pieces that we did not anticipate. But Solar for All has been something that I think all of us at DOEE and DC, we're very proud of it because of the equity that it brings for our low-income residents.
Daniel, would you like to go next?
Sure, absolutely. And to add, I think Solar for All has been a great opportunity for us to take a look at how we're able to include equity into our discussion around affordable energy and sustainability, and being able to look at how all of the sustainability actions and things that we're doing through our new legislation under the Clean Energy DC Act can work together to help us make DC one of the cleanest, greenest leaders in the country across the globe. So I think overall, just the takeaway with Solar for All is that we're still learning and still growing. And in order for us to scale, you know, this model, you know, there's still a few things that we'll have to work on, especially in the affordable housing sector. So look forward to continuing to do this work and to share with the partners through CESA and other jurisdictions that are out there trying to do the same thing. Thank you.
And Jennifer, would you like to close?
Absolutely. Certainly echoing the points of Director Wells and Daniel. I think that innovation and resiliency are work hand in hand, and I think that this is a fantastic example of that. I do also want to say today we viewed the short film of the documentary, but for those who are interested, this is originally was an 8-part web series, totaling about 45 minutes in total. And so if you or friends or neighbors, colleagues are interested in viewing the whole web series, both are free and available. They can be viewed on DOEE's YouTube channel, as well as DOEE's Instagram as well.
Great, thank you all for joining us today. As Sam mentioned at the start of our webinar, this webinar has been recorded. You will receive the audio file within the next 2 days. It will also be available on our website. You can also visit our website to sign up for our newsletter to receive more information and updates on the work in DC, as well as our other member states. You can also find us on Facebook and at Twitter, at CESA_news. Our webinar schedule is on the screen now. Please visit our website to learn more about and register for our upcoming webinars. We will now conclude our webinar, Solar for All, the District of Columbia's Innovative Strategy for Low to Moderate Income Solar. Thank you again to everyone for joining. Goodbye.